So here we have Moti Zilberman from Meta. We have Monica Restrepo from Shopify, who you've seen on stage. Kadi, Kraman from Formidable, who you've also seen. Ankita Kulkarni, who's an independent educator, who you've also seen on stage today. We have Charlie Cheever from Expo. We have Saad Najmi from Microsoft. And of course, we have Krzystof Magiera from Software Mansion. Thank you for joining us. All right, everybody got a mic? Everybody good?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, let's get the show rolling. Let's start with Moti. Moti, you haven't been on stage today. You've joined us just for the panel. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on at Meta recently and what might be interesting to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I work on the React Developer Experience team. If you've watched the talk by Alex this morning about Metro and other developer experience things that we've been doing, you have a lot of the context about what I've been working on as well. And yeah, so like Metro is kind of the thing that sits between your code and the app. And if we're doing our job right, you don't feel that it's there. But there's a lot of kind of quality of life enhancements that we've shipped, and obviously symlink support that's been long awaited. And things like lazy bundling, etc., and our collaboration with Expo. So yeah, lots of good stuff.
I said it's nice to hear that Metro is back. I remember my React Native days; it was always a project that I love to hate or hate to love. But it's good to see that it's now getting the love that it finally deserves. Charlie, I thought it was interesting because like you had Expo talks, multiple of them on stage, and there were also DX improvements that like you as Expo are working on. It's like, do you guys collaborate on this? Is this something you do together?
Yeah, I think especially in the last year or so, we've really ramped up the way that we're coordinating with Meta and trying to just make everything good for everybody. And Evan was explaining how we're jettisoning Webpack and going kind of all in on Metro. And the only reason we're able to do that is because we're working in concert with Meta. It's been so great to work with Moti and the other people there. And then I think it's also just really important for the whole community that we kind of present a united front. Because like if you think about a new person coming in and using React Native, it's really distracting and stuff if they have to make a big decision about, oh, do I use Expo or not use Expo? Do I use this bundler or that bundler? Or should I use this or that? And so when we're all working together and we can kind of present the best solutions as a package, I think it'll really help just grow our community and get more people using React Native and building great stuff.
Nice, and of course the dark horse, the other big company working on React Native is Microsoft. So the investment that Microsoft is putting into React Native is massive in terms of like the developer effort, all the open source projects, desktop projects you're doing. It's like, how do you see this collaboration? Like is it working? How could it be sort of like, how is it like from a developer point of view? What's that look like?
I think it's working. I think it's working pretty great. I think it was mentioned that Microsoft was part of the bundler working group, and that a lot of the things that we wanted to use internally, like symlink support in Metro, we then had to do that in our next kit. We made that open source, and now that ended up in Metro, like there. And like, I think that's pretty great. And as I've been saying to a lot of people, the more people who work together, the more benefit you can have for the community. It's really helped my job a lot in the React Native macOS world, and I'm just happy to see people working together.
Nice, but it's of course like as platform teams you can only provide for so many sort of requirements. Like Monica and I were talking about still the need for like internal tools. Like I'm sure that so many of you are building internal tools in your companies. You talked about the Testify project. It's like what is it like trying to sort of build on top of this platform like internal tooling and so forth.
Yeah, so I think like it just responds to the need of just not having enough broadcasted, I guess, libraries that just like help us test, especially the UI part of our applications. So it's just one of the tools that we have found to be helping us with the testing process when, especially as I was saying during my talk, we were doing upgrades, so we can see how the visuals of our applications just change, if there are changes or not, so just to serve us as a backup. And then obviously if like we all unite to kind of create the same tools that will support the process for everybody will be better. But it's a process that takes time and cooperation within companies and everything. So we are like on that path, but still there is some spaces where we have to create our own solutions.
Yeah, I mean, and Kadi, your team, you've built your, testing solution, right? React Native OWL, and you've even open sourced it. So, like, what's that process look like? Like, from a, almost like a userland developer, you are building apps, you're sort of like answering the requirements that, you need, but then you go and open source it, give it away for free. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at Formidable, we tend to, we solve the problems that we have, and then if we can, we'll share it with the world. So yeah, we have, I think recently, 2 of the libraries that we published were React Native OWL, which is like a regression testing, visual regression testing library, and then the other one is React Native AMA, which is an accessibility library, because, I think more and more, I think we are focusing on accessibility, especially in the US. I don't know if everyone knows this, but in the US, if you publish an app that is not complying to accessibility standards, you can actually get fined by it. So get your accessibility in order.
Yeah, that's not the best moral reason to do it, but capitalism only understands one word, and it's fiscal violence. So I think that's a good reminder. But yeah, I think this, like this community is built on open source. Like I got my start, in React Native building open source libraries. And Krzystof, Software mentioned you guys are such a powerhouse in the React Native open source. Like almost every React Native app uses, screens and reanimated and these things. Like, what do you see your role in it, and like how do you balance the sort of the let's say the fiscal needs of the company and like this sort of giving back?
Yeah, so we basically need to find some way of doing that. So we're like very happy to be part of the community, but also we need to get some source of income and yeah, it's important to find the right balance. I think like a lot of people at the conference have been approaching me, hey, I know you because we're working on an open source project, and it's the same for the open source team that we have at Software Mention, and they're recognized, and like people sometimes they say, hey, we are using your projects and we should like find some way to contribute. But it's definitely not that easy for everyone to do so. Like there is like unless you want to contribute your free time or treat it as a hobby, then that might make sense. But oftentimes you're just not in a correct situation to right situation to be able to invest more time or more basically more of your time to build open source tools, and I think for us it's good that we have a really good synergy between like what we do because of the work that we do in open source. We get more people recognize us. This helps our business, but we also like by investing in open source, we also actually improve things for our clients because our clients use React Native, of course, and that's like the third kind of leg of that is that we also by having like a real impact on open source, we are not only making our company recognizable, helping our clients, but we're also helping the developers that we hire. Like there are people who are coming to us. They a lot of them just learn React Native at work, right? So this is the time they invest in learning this this framework, and by making it better, it's also better for them. I mean, because they invested time to learn it. So that's kind of like a win-win for everyone, and that's been working for us very well.
Nice. Yeah, Ankita and I were actually having a conversation about this. Like open source is one of those things where, I think a lot of people want to get involved. It's, like it seems to, at least for me personally, it's been a huge positive career boost for my, my career trajectory and the jobs that I've gotten almost all through open source. So Ankita, like, how do you think, like, if there are people here in the audience who want to contribute to any of these projects that people represent or start their own, like, how does that work? How do you get started?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think you need to look into what is something that you're most passionate about. For example, like if there's a library you think that you can improve, if there's something that you think that could be better in general, look into what their open source guidelines are in general, right? Like for example, my first open source contribution was probably in like the Node.js package, where it led to so many different conversations in general in terms of like the HTTPS security prompts and things like that. So I feel like I learned a lot very early in my career, the importance of open source and how it can like significantly impact your career. So I feel like figure out what you're passionate about, figure out what the libraries are doing. And I know that, we have so many like open source maintainers here that are very like inclusive, and they would, you can pick their brain on how you could, contribute to it in general, right? So take a look at the guidelines and like, try to like, just like go for it and like try it out, yeah.
Nice.
Maybe one more thing to add to that is that like people often perceive contributing to open source as actually writing software, whereas there are also different ways of contributing. Like starting from spending a little bit more time maybe on providing a good reproducible example for the issue that you're reporting. Like just opening issue is one of the most important ways of contributing, and doesn't require you to figure out like what project you will be building and maintaining it later on. And even like so small things like filling the state of React Native survey is like one way of contributing as well. We've seen today on a couple of slides the results from the survey, and like what Moti was mentioning earlier, like over the course of past 2 years, maybe we've seen much more interest from Meta side in communicating with the community, getting feedback. That's really important, and we also see that they're really taking into account that feedback. So the debugging part that was like a second most requested feature was like something that's the working group is being built upon. So who out of you have filled the survey this year? See that, huh? There you go. So that's a real room of improvement, and the easiest way to start contributing to the community, I think.
Yeah, speaking of good ways to get started with open source contributions, I do want to mention that on the React Native repo, we actually have issues marked with an umbrella emoji. So those are like collections of small, kind of beginner-friendly tasks. And we've shipped, I believe it was something like 100 PRs in the past year or so. Since like starting to open those umbrella issues. And yeah, it's really easy to get started, to like pick a module that's related to the new architecture and like follow the instructions in the task and refactor it and kind of land your first PR in React Native itself. And yeah, I'd encourage you all to check that out.
Yeah, I just wanted to add from userland, I think a good rule of thumb is if us as users of Node modules, if you ever find yourself using patch package to just fix a line in a library that you're using, then yes, that's a quick fix for you, but this is the perfect opportunity to also go to that library's GitHub page. Usually there's a contributing like markdown file that's really common for most libraries. Look at that for the guidelines and then just raise a PR for it, and then that could be your first contribution, and we'll all love you.
All right, I think we have to do an obligatory shout out to David Sheldrick for Patch Package, the package that has saved my ass more times than all other packages combined. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. So we had a lot of questions from the audience. We're not going to read them out sort of like word for word, but I've sort of tried to group them as themes and some stuff that we can have conversations about. So maybe like to nobody in particular, this one theme that seems to be emerging is React Native is now kind of grown up. Like people have built really big apps, with it. And when you start something new, it's really fun and easy, and then suddenly the cracks start to sort of like show, and there's challenges. So like, there's been questions about scaling and upgrades and accessibility. So like, if anybody has any sort of particular takes on, for example, like what are the big scaling challenges that people see when they are building React Native apps, and like how do we go about solving those?
Yeah, maybe I would add to this because I've faced quite a few, like, not challenges, but interesting opportunities, I should say, to learn new technologies in general. I feel like a part of me being a developer, I'm really excited about these challenges, right? Like, yes, we have so many things such as React Server components and packages getting upgraded and getting better, and all these amazing open source maintainers maintaining it. But on the other hand, I feel like if I wear my consulting hat, it's also some of the things like, I feel like I want to try this package out, create spike tickets and really assess if this is ready for production before, migrating it into an app yet, So I feel like that's something that there's a bit of like risk involved in it for sure, but I feel like I'm really open and excited to try it out and like really appreciate all the future there is to it. But I feel like as we scale the apps, we need to like also be careful, especially in React Native world, as we upgrade the app and like merge new things as well.
Yeah, I want to throw out just another plug for Expo Router here, because we noticed that one thing that happens when people build really big apps is that they start to take a long time to bundle, and like as you keep adding more and more, that just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so, sort of learning a lesson from the web here, when you break things out and sort of only do the work to on-demand load each given route, that can save a lot of time. And so that's one of the things that's built into the new Expo Router. The other related thing there is when you're upgrading, when a lot of things break because some stuff changed, it's really tough if you have to go fix all of them before your app will render. And so by breaking that out so you can actually load the profile page or the timeline or whatever it is before that, that'll make a big difference, I think. But I think the thing that really solves this problem, that I've been sort of talking about every so often for years now, is I think when we reach a certain point of maturity with React Native, I'd really like to see it have a kind of backwards compatibility that's almost guaranteed forever, so that if your TypeScript or JavaScript doesn't change, upgrading from one version of React Native to the other shouldn't break anything. I don't know if there's reasons why it's not quite there yet, I don't think, but I think that's like as a long-term target to hit. I think that would really help wider adoption of the technology, because that's one of the things that makes the web so popular, is you can still use jQuery on the version of Chrome that came out at 4 a.m. last night. And it's, that makes it so that people can keep their things running and go back, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is important, for the upgrades that I was mentioning before too, is to embrace modularity when it comes to developing our applications. It ties a little bit along with what you were saying with the Expo Router, but just also, that allows our applications just to be, if something is breaking in one side, perhaps might not make the whole application to be breaking if it's possible. And also not to ignore versions that are coming when they don't look that they are super impactful at first, right? Because like it's easier to jump from small, version changes than breaking changes. So, that's like some sort of the things that we can account for right now while we try to make things better overall.
Yeah, I just want to add that from kind of the React team's perspective, React Native team's perspective, we're definitely currently taking kind of a good hard look at the pace of breaking changes that are coming out in React Native, and how do we communicate clearly, what's ready for everyone to use, what's ready for kind of early adopters to try out and give feedback. We're really trying to get honestly to do a better job of communicating that going forward. Nico in his talk this morning actually talked about stability a lot, and that's something that we're actively looking into. Like, what does a stable version of React Native look like? What does a stable version of the new architecture look like when we finally ship that? And it's also a thing that we're balancing against the desire to keep evolving React. I think there's some really, really exciting innovation that's still happening in React itself. You mentioned React Server Components. I think of that as like a really exciting discovery that's been made in some lab, like a scientific discovery. And we as an industry are still in the process of figuring out what the practical applications of that are. And it's totally fine if like it doesn't apply to you right now. But we're very excited about the potential of that to be really meaningful, even for React Native apps, even for things like local first apps that we heard about in this conference. Like, I think that model goes actually way deeper than just kind of client-server web apps. Even if that is kind of the first kind of visible application that we see today. I think there's lots more to come.
Yeah, I think this is always the difficult thing. Is backwards compatibility comes with a cost. Stability also moves things to move more slowly. And I guess this is the question that we're not really supposed to be asking, but I think we must ask. And I'm looking at Moti here, but I'm not expecting him to give an answer. 1.0.
I'm gonna give a slightly controversial answer and say yes. And we don't know that it's going to be called 1.0. We don't know about the timeline. But like I said, we are taking a good look at what stability means for React Native and how we balance all of these things. It's certainly on our minds. The concept of stability is just how we're thinking about how difficult upgrades are at the moment. So yes to the idea, and we're thinking about it.
Yeah, Saad, I mean, you mentioned in your talk that you were running a sort of what do you call it, like out of tree? No, what?
Out of tree platform.
Out of tree platform. So basically, you have a fork that has a bunch of ifdefs and other custom code, and every time you need to upgrade, not only do you need to upgrade like everybody else, you need to actually move chunks of code from one code base to another. So like, I'm not asking from a Microsoft strategy perspective, but you as a developer, like, what does it mean? What does stability sort of like mean to you? What is the right prioritization between trying to get all of these new features in to help make the platform better versus like, when do we just say it's good enough now? Let's build it.
Yeah, so being one of the out-of-tree platform fork maintainers, I kind of get to see upgrading difficulties from both ends. One is we have to merge a lot of commits from React Native down into macOS and Windows, and then once we've done that, then bring it down to all of the Microsoft apps and things we have internally. And so we see all the we have to keep track of all of the new features that are coming, and then we have to go update all of our stuff to use that, and then do that all over again, because by the time we finish that, there's a new version of React Native. And I do think that it's been getting better. I think that there's been a lot of effort from Meta and the open source community and the CLI team and lots of people to make the React Native experience easier. What stability means to me is that my job is less of me pulling my hair out as I merge commits, and I think that's been happening, and I'm happy about that.
Nice. One thing that always struck me about React in general is that one of the reasons why it's stood the test of time as a platform is that it didn't try to solve all the problems. It left a lot of sort of solution space in the user land for people to explore. That not only attracted really smart people who wanted to solve hard problems for fun, but also like allowed the marketplace of ideas to sort of like converge on solutions. So there's this like idea of like one monolithic thing, and of course React Native is a much more complicated project. It requires this like a bigger core than React does. But for example, Krzystof, you guys like screens, for example, is something that in my opinion kind of should have been baked into React Native, but you guys built it in sort of user land. Do you think that there is going to be a point where like the core platform itself will provide all of the hooks and the primitives needed, and then from there on out, people like yourself can go and like build out all the rest of the things that the ecosystem needs?
Yeah, I'm happy with the way it's currently structured. It allows like to give enough flexibility both to the core team, Meta, and to us being like a library developers, and also like I think on top of all those both things is Expo, and like Expo Rose is kind of like giving you all the stuff that you really need to build your app, and even more than that, it's not just the the collection of the SDKs, but it's also the service that allows you to figure out how to structure your workflows, how to build how to deliver software. So I think kind of this. I mean, it seems to be working really well. Like Expo is growing really and providing more and more stuff for us to use, and all the things that we as software mentioned have been developing for our clients in the past to help with the developer workflows, like how do you get the preview builds, for example, that are now being solved. So it's great seeing that way, and I think there is. Like Expo definitely have more incentive to build that kind of stuff, and I think that kind of having those roles divided, it's been working pretty well for the community. Sure, maybe Charlie wants to add something to that. How do you feel about Expo doing all the things that Meta doesn't want to do?
Yeah, I do think there's sometimes people talk about shipping the org chart, and I think like one component of the decision about how to organize all this stuff is about who is going to work on all this stuff. And even though I think we're doing a pretty good job recently of people at Software Mansion, CallStack, Infinite Red, Microsoft, Meta, of all talking and coordinating and trying to figure this out, that still does inform where it makes sense to draw the lines. I also think one thing that's really good about React Native is that you do have the ability to drop down and go into native in a lot of places, and then so like the possibilities for somebody in, as you sort of you're saying, userland, being able to do almost anything are there at all times, basically, which is great. But I do think that like one thing that we want to provide over time with the Expo SDKs is this sense that like somebody who just knows JavaScript or TypeScript can jump in and just like have immense power at their fingertips to just build exactly what they are dreaming of, like without having to necessarily start writing a bunch of like native code or installing a bunch of third-party modules that they have to research. But they just have like this is basically what happens on the web, where you have most of the APIs that you want built into the browser, and you don't have to write a lot of native code or anything to do almost anything you can imagine.
Yeah, maybe just to add, we think that it's amazing and really important that kind of userland opinionated frameworks like Expo exist on top of React Native. We feel that it's a great way for vast majority of developers to be using React Native, where we kind of see our role in then kind of taking some of the ideas that are kind of proven out and that are really popular with developers, that are really popular with users, that provide a good user experience, and to find ways to bake them into the framework or to bake them into kind of the core of React Native itself, to solve kind of classes of problems so that ultimately developers don't need to think about them while still like delivering the best user experience. So you can think about things like concurrent rendering and suspense being our kind of proposed way of like solving kind of loading states at scale. You can think about our kind of upcoming auto-memoizing compiler, also known as React Forget, being a way to for developers not need to think about, oh, do I memorize this component? Do I not memorize this component? So that's where we see our role in really kind of baking in kind of this kind of increased leverage for developers to deliver the user experience that we believe in and that we care about.
Nice. So I think we want to move to the next topic. We don't have a huge amount of time left, so let's jump in. The other big area that we had a lot of questions about is just the state of cross-platform in React Native. I remember when I was a React Native developer, it was theoretically possible to build apps for web, but it wasn't really something that was very recommendable. Now with Expo Router, you can do static websites. Basically render a static website out of your Expo app, and we have people here like Monica, who works at Shopify, which is one of the big web companies. Like, what would it mean? Maybe an open question to the panel here is like, what would it mean for you or your teams or the people that you try to enable for them to actually be able to consider React Native as a kind of like first-class framework for building applications for web?
Well, it just will provide us more flexibility to develop our products, right? Like, will also give us more speed, right? And the learning curve, if there is any, or however it goes, will be flattened. Like we will have more options to interchange our like developers across those like the same platform, if it were to be like that. And it'll, again, I think the biggest benefit will be speed and the ability to iterate faster through our products.
And then what's standing in our way? Charlie, what do you think?
I think well, first of all, I think this is just kind of inevitable in some ways. Like, people are working with smaller teams. There's a contraction across the tech industry. People need to move fast. And people just want to build the same product in general and have it reach their users on all the platforms where their users are. And, we're seeing, I talked about Blue Sky in the keynote, and we didn't tell them to do this, but they just started off and they're like, we need to be on iOS, Android, and web, and we don't have the resources to do anything else. We're going single code base, and they made it work. And so you can pull it off now, but we know there's still more to do there. And the litmus test that I've been telling our team is that we need to make building with Expo Web like as good as the best other ways to build websites out there if we really want to solve this problem. So that like, you know, whenever we get there, whether that's 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, then when people in this room are thinking like, hey, I need to build a new website for this client or for this project I have in mind, that if you're just building a website and you're not even sure if you want an iOS app or an Android app, that it's still a very legitimate choice to use React Native Web, Expo Web, just to build the website. And if we reach that bar, I think we'll unlock, that's where this unlock happens, where it just becomes like, oh yeah, this is a totally first-class platform, not like a theoretically possible cool demo type thing. And that's where I think there's going to be a threshold point where it sort of tips and everything changes.
So Expo's going to take on Vercel.
I think there's a lot of space here, and that's getting way ahead of things. But I think people want to build products that reach all these things, and like we're just thinking about helping them do what they want to do.
I think there's like an increased interest in using React Native on web, and like if I just look at App.js, like last year's conference had a lot of people like starting from the first edition of the conference in 2019, there was like one talk with mentioning React Native Web, whereas like it's last year we already have like 3 or 4 talks where people were just talking, we build this thing using React Native for web, or using like running React Native on web. I think one blocker for this to evolve faster is that so React Native has been originally adopted by companies that have already been using React. So they had their website built, and they moved some developers to now working on React Native, and now they end up having React Native apps, and then their their websites that are not using React Native. And it's a difficult choice for them, to now migrate towards using React Native on web. So that's something perhaps that's not going to happen very soon. But then like every other company that is like just starting up, like Blue Sky, for example, it's ready there. Like they can use it already.
I think one interesting factor, if you think about it as a little bit, pull back and look at it from a higher level, is that there's a lot of app-first companies who may not be fully happy with the sort of the distribution platforms of Google and Apple, right? Like, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of difficulty. Updating apps is painful. Like, are we seeing a sort of app-first companies want to, sort of like hedge on web and like have a more open platform, and is React Native for web the kind of path to that? Hot potato, nobody wants to take it.
I mean, I think that this is just the reality of what users are demanding, where like, if you think about something that's really popular like TikTok, like people, when they first get it, it's usually that one of their friends sends them a link to a TikTok video, and they first open it in the web browser, and that's their first experience. But then, if you really want to use it, you've got to get the app, because otherwise it just is clunky, and you can't really browse your feed and stuff like that. And so, people want to consume in all these different ways, and so like, it's basically the same product, and so you want to have a single team building it and making the same design decisions, and the components should be the same, but you need to reach people on all these different services. And so it makes sense for that to come from a single code base, but it needs to target all these different things. And I think that's just like, that's going to dictate how companies approach new projects in the future. I think they'll always, with anything like this, there's always this stuff where people already have a team set up to do this and that, and like, there's still people using like mainframes written in COBOL and stuff like that. Doesn't make any sense except for historical reasons. So that'll be the case. But new projects, I think we're going to see eventually almost everybody moving to this kind of structure.
Well, I've definitely been in a situation where we're building both the app and the website for a client, and then the app we're building in React Native, so we are blazing fast and amazing. And we are building features quicker than the web, so we're getting asked if we can have the same thing on the web in a shared component library, because it's React and React Native, and then we have to explain that it doesn't quite work like that. So it would be great to get to a point where it would work like that.
Well, I mean, FlexGap is a tiny, tiny step that direction. Is anybody seriously working on sort of like a cross-platform styling solution that would be sort of, actually broad enough to work perfectly on both platforms? I guess Tamagui is a step towards that.
I think that's the leading candidate right now, Tamagui.
Yeah, so shout out to Tamagui, shout out to Nate. All right, we are coming to a time. We started a little late, so we might not take the full 45 minutes that we were allotted for this panel. But maybe, any final words that people on the panel have to the audience? Anything that you would like to see more of in the world that maybe people in this room can help us sort of create, or any other final words?
I think I would add that I know that there's a lot of change and innovation happening that a lot of us mentioned in the panel in general. But I think what's important is to like kind of keep an open mind, and as you try out stuff and like libraries or packages or frameworks or anything in general, like, try to make it better, because I think innovation can only happen if not just one company is pushing for it, but if the community is pushing for it, right? So if you see something that you think can be improved, like improve the docs, improve like the libraries in general, and like, use specific things to like contribute and, create better libraries and frameworks in general. And I was like, that was something I would like say, because I know there's a lot of, I guess like there's a lot of innovation with AI and all that stuff, and I feel like there's something that I would definitely want to encourage everyone to like, innovate and keep an open mind to.
Well, I think those are wise final words. One more thing, just randomly, Rick Hanlon from the React team just messaged me. Should we send a selfie to Rick? Can anybody say, hi, Rick?
Hi, Rick.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of you to join this panel. Thanks for the incredible talks. Thank you for contributing to this wonderful conference. Thank you to our audience. Let's give our panel a big round of applause.